Thanks for watching Numbskull News, and today we're going to get into this ACC stuff. There's been a ton of speculation from all over the place, from every outlet you can think of, talking about the ACC, teams leaving the ACC, where are they going, how are they going to get out of the grant of rights. So this is what we're going to get into today. And yes, I am one of those people. I believe firmly that the ACC is going to negotiate with the teams that want to leave, give them a nice exit fee where the ACC gets a wad of cash, and it's not the $500 to $600 million that it is right now to leave. And they've already backfilled 3 teams. As the timetable is going to be crazy, right? So as far as Florida State, Clemson, maybe UNC, those are the 3 everyone's talking about. They will exit fairly soon, before 2026, maybe even as early as next year, depending on who you're talking about, who's reporting it. Greg Flugar, several others have talked about it, even Curb Herbstreit. Irregardless, those are the teams that are going to get out quickly. Now, everybody else is going to stay in the ACC for a while because they're going to be collecting on the money, those exit fees. And sure, Florida State, Clemson, and UNC, I'm sure they can all write a check for whatever that amount would be. It's somewhere between $100 and $250 million is what that negotiated exit fee is probably going to end up being. And I'm sure all 3 of those schools can write checks, but that's not what's going to happen. It's going to get paid out over time. And since it's going to get paid out over time, all those schools are going to want to stay there and collect that money. It only makes sense. No team, I can't see any teams leaving for the Big 12 until the Big 12 makes considerably more money than the ACC. And that can't really happen until 2031. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's still going to be just solely ESPN and Fox. I don't know if there's going to be some streamers in there. Who knows? But I can tell you this, it's going to be considerably more money than the ACC is making right now. I wouldn't doubt if that future money is somewhere around $50 million a year on a payout. Now, that's complete speculation on my part, but I've heard people say, well, they're not going to make any more money in 2031. Oh, they're stupid. Yeah, they will. With those 16 brands they have right now, and if you add Gonzaga, maybe another basketball-only team or 2, you could be able to split off that basketball and possibly get Fox to pay essentially what ESPN's paying right now as their share. So, yeah. And both those organizations, Fox and ESPN, need the Big 12 content. They can't survive on just SEC for ESPN or just the Big 10 for Fox and also NBC and also CBS. They need more content than that. Peacock needs more content than that. ESPN Plus needs more content than just that. That's where you need, that's where the Big 12 lies. It's what you need. I believe the earliest you can get or expect ACC teams to leave the ACC and come to the Big 12 would be sometime after 2031. It's going to be a while, folks. It's not going to be anytime soon. I was one of those people that thought, okay, the ACC is going to melt down. But as you've seen the steps the ACC has taken, it's going to lead to their survival, which means getting teams out of there isn't going to be that easy. Now, once you get closer to the end of this current TV deal, because they're not going to be making the same money at that point, that their money's going to come down. And that will, in 2036, obviously, teams at that point will leave to the Big 12. So I made me a little chart. Call me Chart Boy if you want. Chart Boy Mark II if you would like. I made a little chart so I can kind of illustrate where I think teams are going to go and then ultimately what the ACC will look like in the future. So let's go. All right, we already got this sucker started. And as you can see, I have Clemson and Florida State, SEC, and the Big 10. Let me explain. Well, I have this crazy belief that the SEC is only interested in adding 2 more teams. Now, if they thought they had a chance in hell of getting Notre Dame, they would add them, of course. But I believe the SEC, they want Clemson and they want Florida State above anything else. I know there's still people out there that think, hey, the SEC will get to 20 teams. Who outside of Clemson, Florida State, and Notre Dame do you think the SEC thinks would be worthy? I don't see any other team. Look, this is about matchups right now with the SEC. It's not about markets. All right. It's not about changing demographics. If it was about changing demographics, your number one ad, well, outside of Florida State, your number one ad would be something in Memphis, Tennessee, something else in Texas. Outside of Florida, those are the biggest growing markets and states that there is. They're not concerned about that. They're concerned about brands that give them premium matchups. What's a premium matchup? A matchup is a contest between two schools that are going to get huge freaking ratings every year it's played or every time it's played. So if you think about premium matchups involving Clemson, that would be Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU. Also Florida State, because you're thinking about the ACC. Well, that's their one premium matchup every year is Clemson versus Florida State. That's their biggest matchup every year. And you get that in the SEC when you take those two teams. Plus everything else. Florida State versus Florida. Florida State versus Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, all those, Auburn, whatever. But that's a hell of a lot of premium matchups. It makes it worth a premium price to bring them into the SEC because you can sell that shit. You can sell the advertisers on those games and get a premium price. Therefore, those are premium matchups. That's what the SEC is concerned about. Nothing else. All right. Both those programs can make the NCAA tournament and they can make the CFP. All right. So they're not a drag on your payout shares. They will add to those. So those are the two ads the SEC want, in my opinion, and that's where their realignment story will end once they have them. For the Big Ten, the big fish, and it's always been Notre Dame, and it's still Notre Dame. However, after that, if you want to talk about market, they want to get into Florida. I'm sure they would love to be in Florida and Texas, but you got to do it with the right brand. Florida State is the right brand for the Big Ten to get into Florida with. Because it's not just Florida. You understand that? Florida, you got Georgia right there. You got Alabama right there. You got Louisiana right there. The Mississippi schools are right there. So that gets you into prime SEC recruiting with Florida State, of course. And I think if they have a shot at Clemson, I think they would take him. I don't think that's a top priority above Notre Dame and Florida State when it comes to the Big Ten. Now, we got to spend just a couple of minutes talking about UNC because this is the third team that's going to leave the ACC. And what everyone believes is going to be soon. Just like Florida State, just like Clemson, UNC is going to go. Now, what has been reported is that UNC is the number one choice for the SEC and for the Big Ten. And I believe that's a smokescreen. I think it's a lie from the pit of hell because I believe the SEC and the Big Ten, both of them really want Florida State really bad. And I believe the SEC really wants Clemson. I think the Big Ten would take them, but they're not the higher priority. Florida State's a major priority. Nothing has leaked out about Clemson. Nothing's leaked out about Florida State. Hell, nothing's even leaked out really about Notre Dame. What has leaked out is UNC being the number one choice of the SEC and Big Ten. Everyone's reported it. That's because it's a smokescreen. That's because the SEC wants the Big Ten to think they're going to take UNC before anything else. And so they'll focus their attention on UNC, and then the SEC can go and snatch up Florida State. Same thing with the Big Ten. They're saying they want UNC number one, first overall, because they badly want the SEC to go and snatch up UNC. And while they're doing that, they can sneak down to Florida to Pensacola and snatch up Florida State. That's what they want. That's why it's a smokescreen. However, there's too much smoke about UNC and the Big Ten. So I can't say that the Big Ten clearly won't take them. It doesn't make sense to me why the Big Ten would take UNC, but it doesn't really have to, does it? It doesn't have to make sense to me. That's kind of where I fall with it. So yes, they do have a chance at the Big Ten. I don't think UNC has a chance in hell at the SEC. Maybe in years past, the SEC really wanted them. Anymore, I don't believe that. And by the way, I know Tony Petitti, he's working diligently with the former Big Ten commissioner who really wanted UNC really bad once upon a time. But that's when the economics were different. The Big Ten didn't exactly make a ton more money than the ACC. So therefore, UNC was very, very attractive, very like-minded school, fit really well in with the Big Ten. However, their football brand doesn't exactly get eyeballs. It doesn't make a lot of money. They make their money off their basketball, their legendary elite brand of basketball. It's a monstrous brand of basketball that has tremendous value. Just doesn't have the same value as football. I've talked about that crap over and over again. I have my doubts about UNC to the Big Ten. So to me, I put them in the line with the Big Ten, but there's a big fat asterisk. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm going to put them on a lower rung of the Big 12. Because there's, like I said, there's been a lot of smoke about UNC and the Big Ten. So I have to say the advantage goes to the Big Ten. But there's still a shot, as Lloyd Christmas would say. There is a chance for UNC to be in the Big 12. And it makes all the sense, especially when you're talking about the TV partners and the amount of money that they want to spend for UNC football. It doesn't make sense. It makes more sense financially for the business partners, for those media companies to have them in the Big 12. That way, both Fox and ESPN can exploit the resources of UNC. So I think it's easier to sell them in the Big 12 than to sell them in the Big 10. Because those matchups don't matter. When UNC plays Ohio State, it doesn't really have that big a ring to it. It's a lot bigger deal when Ohio State plays Florida State, or when Penn State plays Florida State. It's not that big a deal when UNC plays Penn State. It just won't be, or Nebraska, or USC, Oregon or Washington. It's a much bigger brand, much bigger premium matchup with Florida State. It is not a premium matchup with UNC. Now, to me, these are the 6 teams that are most likely to end up in the Big 12 from the ACC, whether that's in 2031, 2036, sometime after 2026. That's when this is likely to happen. NC State, because I don't think they're interested in just being an academic-only conference or being in one. I don't think Virginia Tech nor Louisville are interested in that either. Now, if you pay attention to Jim Williams at all, very intelligent man, definitely been on the inside for a while. He seems to think he has his own idea, had his own list of what the ACC is going to look like, in which he had Pitt staying in the ACC. I don't. He also had Duke. I kind of don't. That I may be off on that, but I think those 2 teams would like to get paid, especially with the kind of conference that the Big 12 has put together in basketball. Duke would be a fool not to go to the Big 12 for more money, more exposure. Sounds a lot, it sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Sounds a little Pac-12-ish, doesn't it? Certainly does. But I think that's the choices that are going to be there to be made. And I think that's what the Big 12 could snatch away from the ACC. Albeit UNC may be a long shot. And speaking of long shots, we got to talk about the University of Miami, the Hurricanes. I do believe the Big Ten, if they are unable to secure Florida State, may very well look to go to Miami, not UNC. Keep in mind, I believe the Big Ten isn't going past 20 teams. They will get there, but they're going to leave a spot for Notre Dame for a very long time. They're not going to fill that spot with just any old swinging dick. They're not going to fill it at all. But you could see them go to 19 with Florida State, possibly UNC, possibly Miami. I'm not sure which one of those two. I don't think they'll add both. They're not pulling, 4 teams out of the ACC. There's no way in hell that's happening. I don't know that they'll pull 2 out of there because I don't think they want to go past 20. I don't believe the presidents of their membership see teams that are good business model for them to go to 20 with. And by the way, I don't think Fox wants them to do it either. I don't think they want to be on the hook for that kind of money for lesser brands. They just don't. And let's be real. Brands like NC State, Virginia Tech, Pitt, a lot of people have talked about Syracuse going to the Big Ten or Georgia Tech. No, those are not big enough brands for the Big Ten. And I guarantee you Fox will not pay for those brands in the Big Ten. Ain't happening. And by the way, ESPN isn't going to want to pay a premium above where they're already getting paid and take them to the SEC. I don't see that at all either. But let's say the Big Ten takes UNC. They probably won't take Miami as well. That would leave Miami a prime candidate and target for the Big 12 in the future. And there's a good chance they get them. It's a bit of a pipe dream, but I do believe the Big 12 is going to end up with either UNC or Miami. Hell, maybe both. And as far as the SEC goes, I can't see them taking Miami. I just really don't. I think they are just all about Florida State and Clemson and nothing else. So now that leaves us with, what is the ACC going to look like? Well, let's start here. 9 schools. Of course, Notre Dame's not full time. And no, they won't join the ACC fully. That'll never happen. I don't think they'll join the Big Ten either. But however, I think this will be the ground floor for the Brainiac Conference that everyone's talking about, the ACC. And, Jim Williams and guys like Kuz's Corner have talked about. And I agree. I think that's actually a smart move for the ACC. These brands right here, I believe they want to win in football and basketball. But by far, their academics mean more than anything. And I'm not saying that it should for any school. But they are not going to put a ton of importance into the sports programs. They don't believe in the NIL stuff, transfer portal stuff. They don't really want a part of that. We know Stanford and Cal don't really want a part of that. SMU, it'll be tough for them for the next 10 years to be any part of that. Virginia, I don't know the stories about Virginia, West or Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, but they actually fit very well in an academic first athletic conference. So I think this is your starting point. And then as you lose teams, of course, there'll be backfill.
Well, my dumbass forgot to move the picture-in-picture crap, right? So you can't see some of the teams I added. That's South Florida. That's Rice. Yeah, Rice. Tulane. So you can't see them, but they're there. Okay, we're talking about the Brainiac Conference. We're going to add those. And yeah, and in case you're wondering, I'm not in the wilds of Arkansas here. It is Halloween at the Numbskull household. So things look a little weird. Anyway, appreciate it, and let's continue.
Now, this is 14 teams. Now, I know as far as that ESPN deal, I believe they can't go below 15, including Notre Dame. So there's one team out there. And I'm leaving it like this because there's a possibility Pitt doesn't leave or maybe never leaves. There's a possibility Duke doesn't leave and doesn't want to go to the Big 12 and rather be associated with these other fine institutions. So it'll just depend on what certain ones do. Now, if it ends up like this, and if I'm right, if Duke and Pitt end up in the Big 12, then they'll have to go and search out for another team. And if you want to leave a comment who you think that mystery team would be, you let me know. Tulane, South Florida, And yes, Rice, which is on par with Stanford as far as academics are concerned, Memphis and UConn and asterisks if they don't get into the Big 12 first. We'll see what happens there in the future. I still think there's a great shot of them going to the Big 12. But right now, I'm going to go with Jim Williams on some of this. A few other outlets, you'll see some similar things. But I think this is about right. And like I said, if they retain a Duke or a Pitt, that'll be the 15th member. If they don't, then they'll go in and they'll reach for somebody else who have no idea. But if you look at what you have right here, this 14, and just think, add Duke or Pitt. I think those are the only two that would actually may have some interest in staying. I mean, I don't know much about Pitt. I know they're a fantastic academic school. In the past, they've been very productive in athletics. I'm guessing they're not going to want to stick around the ACC for lesser money, because this conference right here, featuring Virginia, I know they got an insane win this week against UNC. How in the hell did that happen? But I digress. Virginia Tech, and Georgia Tech, not exactly known for their great football teams, but academically fantastic. Basketball, they do pretty well. I know, especially Virginia does pretty damn well. This is still a pretty decent basketball conference right here. Football, you're going to have a hard time selling that. I'm just saying, because who's the top dog here? I mean, Notre Dame, but Notre Dame won't be in the conference. They'll play games with you. In every other sport, they'll be in the ACC. Oh, not ice hockey, but everything else, basketball, baseball, whatever else, gymnastics, they're going to play with the ACC, and they'll stay with that model. But football-wise, take Notre Dame out of the group. Tulane maybe would be the big dog there. Maybe Memphis some years, maybe UCF some years. And look, Rice is pretty good this year. SMU, actually, I've given them a lot of shit, but let me give them a little bit of love. They've been winning in their conference. They're tearing people a new one. I got to give them that. But who's going to dominate? If you want to call it that. And what kind of ratings is this going to get? This conglomerate of the ACC. This is why whatever they get in 2036, I believe they'll survive, and it'll look something like this. And whatever that is not going to be worth a ton of money. All right. You might be able to get, because it's going to be, you're talking 13 years in the future, just inflation and everything else, you'll probably still get around what they're getting now. So probably somewhere around 20, 25 million per school. But that's going to pale in comparison to what the Big 12 has and what they're going to get in 2031. And by the way, 2036, they're going to be looking to renegotiate again, because they'll probably have somewhere like in 2031, they'll probably get like a 6-7 year extension. So they're going to be right back at the table with much more valuable brands than what ACC brings to the table. That looks damn near like a group of 5 conference. Now, I know Stanford, Cal, if they retain Duke, you'll still have Notre Dame playing with them. You'll still have Virginia and Georgia Tech and Wake Forest, and Boston College. I understand that. But it's hard to sell that. It's hard to sell those ad buys with those brands as far as football goes. Basketball might be a little easier to sell, especially if UConn is in the mix. But yeah, that's some kind of future, I suppose. All right, well, there you have it from me. That's how I see the ACC playing out. There's some variables there, and I understand I could get a lot of things wrong. Okay, so can everybody. But this is how I see it right now. When I get more information, I will my speculation will evolve to fit the facts on the ground. Anyway, thanks for watching this crap, and I'll be back with some other crap later. Bye.